Good evening. It is time for the Iman Report. It is Saturday night, March 20th. If you like what you see, please be kind and hit that subscribe button and give this channel a big like. As we recap UFC on ESPN 21, Brunson versus Holland, as Derek Brunson gets the victory over Derek Holland, over Kevin Holland. Two had it 49-45, one had it 49-46. Brunson the victor. Brunson now on a 4-fight winning streak, and now Brunson could be, I've kind of called him a gatekeeper for the longest time, and maybe now the changing of camps and whatnot, he could actually be one or two fights now away from actually fighting for the title. There is a path for Brunson now to get to the title shot with that 4-fight winning streak. What could be next for Derek Brunson? I think honestly the winner of Marvin Vettori and Darren Till is what should be next for Derek Brunson at this point. Is Brunson a contender? Is Brunson deserving of a second chance against Israel Adesanya? We'll see how far this resurgence goes, but this is a career resurgence for Derek Brunson, and he is now possibly one or two fights away from a title shot after tonight. So I bet when the UFC's on ABC in a few weeks, Derek Brunson's really going to be watching that fight very closely between Hall and Vettori, as that could be a potential title eliminator coming up for Derek Brunson down the line. As for Kevin Holland, this is a loss that's a setback, but he didn't look terrible. He didn't get finished. And it shows, I think that, Holland is looking like a guy who's a top 15 fighter. Maybe he's just not ready for the bigger names yet, but I do think Kevin Holland does have a bright future in the UFC. But he is a very active fighter. I expect him back in the octagon sooner than later. His last loss was to Brendan Allen, then to T. So he's only lost to really some names. That's about it. He's only lost. Other than that, I don't think, for his effort, though, I don't think that Holland should be penalized too much. I do think another ranked fighter is what should be next for Kevin Holland. I do think he is deserving of fighting ranked opponents at this time until proven otherwise. And I think a good name for him next could be Edmund Shabazian. Holland versus Shabazian, two young fighters coming off of losses from Derek Brunson. So I think this would be a fight that makes a lot of sense. I think Edmund Shabazian and Derek Holland, that would be a fun fight to see which one of these two fighters can get back on track. So that's what I'm going to go with for Derek Holland. But he's a bright star. He just ran into a very hot Derek Brunson. In the co-main event, we had unfortunately, I was looking forward to Gillespie returning to the octagon, but unfortunately COVID has that fight canceled for a later date. But in the co-main, Max Griffin knocks out Song Keenan in the first round via knockout. This was a good win for Max Griffin. Griffin, always an entertaining fighter in the octagon. What is next for Max Griffin? Griffin improves to 17-8 in the UFC. Now riding a 2-fight winning streak. He is ranked 50 according to Tapology. He will never fight for a belt, but he's still an entertaining fighter. And you know what? Maybe a fight with James Krause. I think that would be a very entertaining fight between Griffin and Krause. That would be entertaining right there. As for Keenan Song, his first loss in 3 years. What could be next for him? Yeah, probably the loser of maybe the wow. No, maybe not him. But maybe Michel Prazeres. I think that could be a possibility if he's still in the UFC. That's what I'll go with for now. And in the fight before that, the big overwhelming underdog Montserrat Ruiz beats Cheyenne Buys, also known as Cornejo. Beat Cheyenne Buys. But the end of the fight is what was very entertaining about it Hayes. Bays gets into it a bit with Cornejo after the horn. So that was what was entertaining about it right there. But that was a good win for Cornejo as she beats Bays. What is next for Cornejo? For the most part, though, a lot of the Bays train was derailed tonight in the octagon. We will get to the other one later. But yeah, Montserrat Ruiz Cornejo now 10-1 in her fighting career, wins her first UFC fight. She is ranked 43 at strawweight. So what could be next for her is another fighter that is a bit down there in the rankings. But she does pull off the upset this one over Bays. And I think a fight with Jin Yu Frey is what should be next for her. As for Bays, I think we put her up against a debutante. Fight before that, Adrian Yanez knocks out Gustavo Lopez with 27 seconds into the third round. Yanez climbing up the rankings at bantamweight. Adrian Yanez, definitely a knockout artist and could get a nice step up in competition after this win. Yanez improves to 13-3 in his fighting career. On a 6-fight winning streak, 2-0 in the UFC. He is now ranked 55 at bantamweight. And I think what could be next for him is the winner of Hunter Azur and Jack Shore is what should be next for Adrian Yanez. As for what should be next for Gustavo Lopez, Lopez ranks 70. He is now 1-2 in the UFC. And now Tapology is, of course, updating their page. I think the loser of Oliveira and Bibulatov. Let's see, make sure I'm. No, never mind. Strike that one. I say the loser of Felipe Colares and Journey Newsom is what should be next for Lopez. I'm going to go with that. And in the first fight of the night, Tai Tuivasa gets a first round knockout with 49 seconds over Harry Hunsucker. That's not a great name. So definitely a knockout worthy of a shoey for Tai Tuivasa. I think what is next for Tuivasa is you just rebook it with him and Dante Mays is what should be next for him. As for Hunsucker, you just book him up against a debutante. Now on to the prelim card tonight. Macy Chiasson gets the nod over Marion Renault via unanimous decision. Chiasson ranked 11 at women's 135. Let's see who she's fought before I. But for Chiasson, this is a now improves to 7-1 in the UFC. And I think a fight between her and let's make sure they've not fought each other, but I think I'm going to go with Chiasson and Yana Kunitskaya. No, they have not fought against each other. So I think Chiasson could be at the point where she's nearing contention at this point. But I'm going to make sure though not to jump her too quickly up the rankings too. But yeah, I think she beat number 9. So yeah, I think either you put her with a returning Aspen Ladd, or I think more likely than not, I would prefer you go with Yana Kunitskaya, unless these two fight each other, which could also very likely happen. But I am going to go at this point with Yana Kunitskaya, and Chiasson could be closing in on a title shot soon. As for Marion Renault, she's lost 4 in a row in the UFC. This was a tough fight for her, a tough loss. But I honestly think her best course of action at this time is retirement. I do. I think for her, retirement is what should be next for Marion Renault. Fight before that, we have ourselves a new contender in the 155 division as Grant Dawson gets a buzzer beater knockout worth possibly 50 G's over Leonardo Santos. And this will definitely be, this is a big win for Grant Dawson, as Leonardo Santos has never lost in the UFC until tonight at 155. No, don't need that Dawson. But Grant Dawson is a guy that could be closing in on the top 15 as of next week. He now improves to 17-1. And I do think next for him, he should get another name that is fairly close to the top contention, and I think that should be Rafael Fiziev. Fiziev is a guy that is nearing the rankings at 155. Dawson versus Fiziev would be fireworks. As for Leonardo Santos, I think for him a fight with Bobby Green is what should be next. Or excuse me, with Dawson, he wanted to fight Clay Guida. I forgot about that. He called out Clay Guida, and I actually am in support. I think you book Guida versus Dawson. That definitely could get eyes on Grant Dawson. But I do think Bobby Green is what should be next for Leonardo Santos. You put those two together in the octagon, that should be a very fun fight. Fight before that on the docket, Trevin Giles beats Roman Dolidze via unanimous decision. All three judges had it 29-28 for Giles. And Trevin Giles starting to improve in the UFC after a rough start. He is now 14-2 in his career. He's won his last 3 after losing 2 in the UFC. He is now ranked at 36th at middleweight. So he's starting to make some strides back in the right direction. I think for him, the next fight for him should be the winner of Anthony Hernandez and Punahele Soriano is what should be next for Trevin Giles. As for Roman Dolidze, this is his first loss in the UFC. Question is, does he stay at 185 or does he go back to 170? But for now, I'm going to keep him at 185. And I think next for him should be the loser of Fabinski and Mearshire, which should be next, or the loser of Marquez and Alvey. I'll go with that. And the fight before that, Montel Jackson beats Jesse Strader via TKO in the first round. What is next for the up-and-coming Montel Jackson? As he is now 10-2 in his MMA career. And he is now 4-2 in the UFC. ranked 22 according to Tapology. And I think that should be the winner of Sean O'Malley and Tomas Almeida is what should be next for Montel Jackson. As for Jesse Strader, Strader falls to 5-2. And he'll probably get a debutante. This was his first fight in the UFC. But he did, and on top of that, he did miss weight. So we'll see if he sticks at 135 or if he does maybe go to 145. And in the first fight, in the opener, Bruno Gustavo da Silva beats JP Bays via TKOs. It was not a good night for the husband and wife duo of JP and Cheyenne Bays. Bruno Silva, what should be next for him? And this fight, I think, saved Bruno Silva from getting cut. So that is the good news for Silva. Probably, if he had lost, he probably would have gotten cut from the UFC. I say you go with Murad. No. Never mind. The winner of Flick and Jimmy Flick and Francisco Figueiredo is what should be next for him. JP Bays. I think he will likely get a debutante next. That will put a bow on UFC on ESPN 21. Next week it's on to UFC 260 as we get the rematch between Francis Ngannou and Stipe Miocic. Unfortunately, we do lose a really good co-main event between... Unfortunately, we do lose a co-main event I was really looking forward to seeing between Volkanovski and Ortega, as unfortunately Alexander Volkanovski tests positive for COVID-19. I wish him a speedy recovery. Prayers going out to him. But we still have Tyron Woodley against Vicente Luque. The return of Sugar Sean O'Malley against Tomas Almeida. Got Alonzo Manifeld. But we got some other exciting fights, and then before the Easter break. And this will likely be the last pay-per-view without fans, as 261 will be in Jacksonville with fans at 100% capacity. And they've recently announced that UFC 262 will be in Houston with fans at full capacity. I hope everybody has a good night and a good week. I'll be back tomorrow to preview the NL Central. Good night, everybody.